Captain Yoon Jae-wook stared at the massive alien ship through the viewport of his exploration vessel, the New Horizon. The ship was unlike anything humans had ever seen. It looked like a crystal mountain floating in space, covered in purple lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. His hands shook as he reached for the communication controls. "This is Captain Yoon of the Earth vessel New Horizon," he said into the microphone. "We are explorers from Earth. We mean no harm." The response came in perfect English, but the voice was cold and mechanical. "Human vessel, you have entered forbidden space. Prepare to be boarded." Dr. Park So-young looked up from her science station. Her face was pale with fear. "Captain, their ship is 10 times larger than ours. Their weapons are charging." "I see it," Yoon replied. He turned to his crew of 12. They were the best Earth had to offer, scientists and explorers who had volunteered for humanity's first deep space mission. Now they might die because they had traveled too far from home. The alien ship shot a blue beam at the New Horizon. The beam wrapped around the human ship like invisible chains. Yoon felt his ship being pulled toward the alien vessel. All their controls stopped working. "Sir, we're being pulled inside some kind of docking bay," reported Lieutenant Kim Min-ho from the pilot seat. Yoon stood up straight. If these were his last moments as a free man, he would face them with dignity. "Everyone stay calm. Follow my lead. Do not resist unless they threaten to harm us." The New Horizon was pulled into a huge chamber inside the alien ship. The chamber was filled with strange purple mist that made everything look like a dream. Tall figures in dark armor waited for them. They looked almost human, but their skin was gray and their eyes glowed red. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. The airlock opened with a hiss. One of the aliens stepped forward. It was taller than any human, nearly 8 feet high. When it spoke, its voice echoed in their minds, rather than their ears. "I am War Commander Drath of the Vrathari Empire. You are primitives who have contaminated our space with your presence. You will be questioned and judged." Yoon stepped forward, trying to look brave even though his heart was racing. "I am Captain Yoon Jae-wook of Earth. We are peaceful explorers. We did not know this space belonged to anyone." Drath made a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Ignorance is not an excuse. Your species has developed faster than light travel without permission from the hegemony of worlds. This is forbidden." "We don't know what the hegemony of worlds is," Dr. Park So-young said, stepping beside her captain. "We only discovered FTL, travel 5 years ago. This is our first long-distance mission." "Silence, female," Drath commanded. "Primitives do not speak unless spoken to." Yoon felt anger rise in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Please, we can discuss this peacefully. We're willing to leave your space and never return." "Too late," Drath said. "You have seen our ships. You know we exist. The contamination has already spread. You will come with us to face judgment." The human crew was surrounded by Vrathari soldiers and marched through corridors that seemed to be made of living crystal. The walls pulsed with that same purple light, and strange symbols floated in the air like holographic writing. They were taken to a large room with no windows. The walls were smooth and white, and the only furniture was a metal table with chairs that looked too big for humans. Drath pointed to the chairs. "Sit. You will be questioned." For 3 days, the Vrathari questioned them about everything. They wanted to know about Earth's technology, its military, its population, and its plans for space exploration. Yoon tried to answer honestly while revealing as little as possible about Earth's defenses. On the 4th day, Drath brought terrible news. "The Hegemony Council has reviewed your case," he announced. "Your species has been judged primitive and dangerous. You show the signs of aggressive tendencies that threaten galactic peace." "What does that mean?" Yoon asked. "It means your species will be given a choice. Submit to the wisdom of the hegemony or be removed from existence." Dr. Park So-young stood up suddenly. "You can't be serious. You're talking about genocide." "Prefer the term necessary correction," Drath replied. "But your species may avoid this fate. The hegemony is merciful. You will be given an ultimatum to deliver to your leaders." Drath activated a device that projected a three-dimensional image in the air. It showed the solar system with Earth highlighted in red. Numbers and alien text floated around the planets. "These are your demands," Drath said. "First, your species will surrender all faster-than-light technology to the hegemony. Second, your species will submit to genetic modification to remove aggressive tendencies. Third, your species will accept status as a vassal race under Vrathari oversight. Fourth, your homeworld will be limited to a population of no more than 1 billion individuals." The room fell silent. Yoon felt his stomach drop. "You're asking us to give up our freedom and let you change what makes us human." "We are offering you survival," Drath corrected. "Many species have chosen extinction instead. We do not recommend this path." "And if we refuse?" Dr. Park So-young asked quietly. "Then your star system will be sterilized. Every world, every moon, every space station will be reduced to ash. No human will survive to spread your contamination to the galaxy." Yoon looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but also anger. These aliens thought they could just erase humanity because they didn't like how humans acted. They thought humans would just give up and accept slavery. "How long do we have to decide?" Yoon asked. "Your species has 30 of your days from the moment this message is delivered to your leaders. Captain Yoon Jae-wook, you and one other will be returned to Earth to deliver this ultimatum. The rest of your crew will remain here as insurance." "No," Yoon said firmly. "You take all of us back or the deal is off." Drath stepped closer to Yoon. The alien was so tall that Yoon had to look up to meet his glowing red eyes. "You are not in a position to make demands, Primitive." "Maybe not," Yoon replied. "But I won't abandon my crew. If you want Earth to take your ultimatum seriously, you'll show good faith by returning all of us." For a long moment, Drath stared down at the human captain. Then he made that scraping laugh sound again. "Interesting. Your species shows loyalty even in hopeless situations. Very well. You will all be returned, but in a ship we provide. Your primitive vessel will remain here as evidence of your technological inferiority." 2 days later, Yoon and his crew were aboard a small Vrathari transport ship heading back to Earth. The ship moved faster than anything humans had built. What should have been a 6-month journey took only 3 days. As Earth grew larger in the viewport, Dr. Park So-young sat beside Yoon. "Do you think they'll surrender?" she asked quietly. Yoon watched the blue and white planet that was home to 7 billion humans. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know one thing. Humans don't like being told what to do." The transport ship landed at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Yoon and his crew were quickly taken to emergency meetings with world leaders. Admiral Kim Do-hyun, the head of Earth's military forces, listened to their report with a stone face. "So they want us to give up everything that makes us human," Admiral Kim said when Yoon finished his report. "And if we refuse, they'll destroy Earth." "That's correct, sir," Yoon replied. Ambassador Choi Min-ae, Earth's top diplomat, leaned forward. "Captain, in your opinion, are they bluffing? Could they really destroy our entire solar system?" Yoon thought about the massive crystal ships he had seen, the weapons that could stop his ship without even trying, the casual way Drath had talked about erasing entire species. "Ma'am, I don't think they're bluffing. They have the power to do what they threaten." Dr. Park So-young spoke up. "But Admiral, I noticed something during our captivity. They kept calling us primitives, but they seemed surprised by some of our responses. They expected us to be more submissive." "Explain," Admiral Kim ordered. When Captain Yoon refused to abandon the crew, the alien seemed genuinely surprised, like it had never seen loyalty before. And when I questioned their right to commit genocide, it seemed confused by the concept of moral objection. Ambassador Choi made notes on her tablet. "So they might not understand human psychology as well as they think." "Maybe," Dr. Park So-young said. "But that doesn't change the fact that they have superior technology in numbers." Admiral Kim stood up and walked to the window overlooking New York City. Millions of people went about their daily lives, unaware that their species faced extinction. 30 days, he said quietly. They gave us 30 days to decide between slavery and death. Sir, Yoon said, what are your orders? Admiral Kim turned back to face them. His eyes were hard as steel. We're going to do what humans have always done when faced with impossible choices. We're going to find a third option. Over the next few days, the news of the ultimatum spread across Earth. Every government, every military, every scientist and engineer was brought into the discussion. The world had never been so united, not even during the worst wars of the past. Captain Lee Tae-min, commander of Earth's most advanced warship, the Indomitable, met with Admiral Kim in a secure bunker beneath the Pentagon. Admiral, our best ships are no match for what Captain Yoon described, Lee reported. We have 47 combat vessels and maybe 200. The Rathari ship hung in space like a dark crystal mountain, waiting at the edge of Earth's solar system. War Commander Drath stood on his ship's bridge, watching the primitive blue world through massive viewing screens. His red eyes glowed with satisfaction as he counted down the final hours. War Commander, reported his lieutenant, the human homeworld shows no signs of evacuation. Their primitive ships remain in orbit, not fleeing to distant space. As expected, Drath replied. Fear has paralyzed them. When our fleet arrives, they will beg for mercy. Perhaps we will allow some to survive as examples to other primitives. What Drath could not see was the frantic activity happening across Earth and its colonies. In hidden bunkers and secret laboratories, humanity was preparing for a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Dr. Park So-young stood in a laboratory buried 3 miles beneath the Colorado mountains. Around her, Earth's greatest minds worked on projects that would have been called impossible just months before. The ultimatum had changed everything. Humanity had 30 days to prepare for annihilation, and they were not wasting a single hour. Dr. Park called engineer Kang Min-soo from across the lab. Come look at this. She hurried over to his workstation, where holographic displays showed complex brain scans and neural patterns. Kang had been studying the recordings of their conversations with the Vrathari, analyzing every word and gesture. I've been comparing human neural patterns with what we observed from the aliens, Kang explained. Look at this. The hologram showed 2 brain scans side by side. One was clearly human, with chaotic, unpredictable neural firing patterns. The other was more organized, with neat, systematic waves of activity. The alien brain follows patterns, Kang continued. Their thoughts move in predictable ways. They think in sequences following logical steps from problem to solution. And humans? Dr. Park asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Chaos, Kang said with a grin. Human brains jump from idea to idea in ways that make no logical sense. We have intuition, creativity, and the ability to make leaps of logic that bypass normal thinking. Dr. Park stared at the brain scans. That's why they keep calling us primitives. They can't understand how we think. Exactly. And if they can't understand how we think, they can't predict what we'll do. In another part of the complex, Captain Lee Tae-min worked with Admiral Kim Do-hyun to plan humanity's defense. They stood around a holographic map of the solar system, with Earth at the center and red dots marking known Vrathari positions. Sir, Lee said, pointing to the display, our conventional tactics won't work. They have better ships, better weapons, and more experience. If we fight them ship to ship in open space, we'll lose. Admiral Kim nodded grimly. So we don't fight them the way they expect. What do we know about their weaknesses? Lieutenant Commander Bae Jin-ho, Earth's top tactical analyst, stepped forward. He was young, barely 30, but his mind could see patterns in warfare that others missed. Admiral, I've studied every recording from Captain Yoon's encounter, Bae reported. The Vrathari follow military protocols that are thousands of years old. They announce their attacks, they give enemies time to surrender, and they fight according to rules that all civilized species follow. And, Admiral Kim prompted. We're not civilized by their standards, Bae said with a cold smile. We don't have to follow their rules. Across Earth, military bases buzzed with activity. At a training facility in South Korea, Sergeant Han Soo-bin, put a squad of volunteers through exercises that would have killed ordinary soldiers. These men and women were being prepared for something the galaxy had never seen: humans fighting in the vacuum of space. "Remember," Subin shouted as her trainees practiced combat in zero-gravity simulators, "aliens think in terms of ship-to-ship combat. They don't expect boarding parties, they don't expect hand-to-hand fighting. Use that advantage." Private Jiang Qitai, barely 20 years old, raised his hand. "Sergeant, what if their technology is too advanced for us to damage?" Subin smiled grimly. "Private, I've seen the recordings. Their ships are made of crystal and energy. But you know what breaks crystal? A hammer. And you know what disrupts energy? An EMP blast. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." In Earth's orbital shipyards, Captain Song Hae-jin supervised the conversion of civilian vessels into warships. The process was crude and dangerous, but desperate times called for desperate measures. "Captain," reported Chief Engineer Lee Wan-shik, "we've mounted nuclear missiles on the cargo hauler Prosperity. She's not pretty, but she can deliver a warhead to any target in the system." Song looked at the converted ship through the observation window. It looked like exactly what it was: a civilian vessel hastily modified for war. But it represented something important: humanity's refusal to give up. "How many ships do we have ready?" she asked. 47 proper warships and another 200 converted civilian vessels," Lee replied. "The converted ships won't last long in a real battle, but they can make the enemy work for their victory." Meanwhile, in a secure communications center, Ambassador Choi Min-ae worked on humanity's secret weapon, information warfare. She led a team of hackers, linguists, and psychologists who were preparing to fight the Vrathari in ways they would never expect. "Ambassador," reported Dr. Yoon Hae-jin, a specialist in alien psychology, "we've identified a potential weakness in their command structure. The Vrathari seem to rely heavily on their communication networks. If we can disrupt those networks, they'll be flying blind." Choi finished. "Excellent. What do you need?" "Time to study their communication protocols and access to our most powerful transmitters." As the days passed, humanity prepared for war with the intensity that surprised even themselves. Old enemies became allies. Nations that had fought for centuries worked together as if they had always been friends. Every human understood that this was not about politics or territory. This was about survival. But the most important preparations were happening in secret. In hidden facilities around the world, scientists worked on weapons that violated every treaty humans had ever signed. Nuclear weapons were miniaturized. Biological weapons were designed to target alien physiology. Computer viruses were created to attack technology humanity barely understood. Dr. Park So-young found herself leading one of the most controversial projects. In a laboratory that officially did not exist, she worked with a team of geneticists and weapons specialists on something that made her stomach turn. "Doctor," said Dr. Cho Sang-wook, her deputy, "the weapon is ready for testing." She looked at the vial of clear liquid in his hand. It looked harmless, like water. But the contents could kill every Vrathari on their ship within hours. "Have we tested it on the tissue samples from Captain Yoon's encounter?" she asked. "Yes. The virus attacks their neural implants, causing a cascade failure in their nervous systems. Death is unpleasant." Dr. Park felt sick. She had become a scientist to help people, not to create weapons of mass destruction, but if humanity was going to survive, they needed every advantage they could get. "Doctor," Dr. Cho said quietly, "I know this is difficult, but remember what they plan to do to us." She nodded. The Vrathari intended to sterilize Earth's entire solar system. 7 billion humans would die if she didn't act. "Begin production," she ordered. "We'll need enough for their entire fleet." While scientists prepared humanity's secret weapons, military leaders planned how to use them. In a war room beneath the Pentagon, Admiral Kim Do-hyun met with his top commanders to finalize their strategy. "Gentlemen, ladies," he began, "we face an enemy with superior technology and numbers. Our only advantage is that they don't understand us. We're going to use that." Captain Lee Taemin studied the battle plans projected on the wall. "Admiral," This strategy requires us to sacrifice most of our fleet in the opening engagement. That's correct, Admiral Kim replied. They expect us to fight desperately but conventionally. We'll give them what they expect to see while our real attack happens elsewhere. Lieutenant Commander Bei Jin-ho pointed to a section of the plan. Sir, the timing has to be perfect. If we move too early, they'll adapt. Too late, and our sacrificial forces will have died for nothing. Then we won't be too early or too late, Admiral Kim said simply. We'll be exactly on time. As the final day approached, Earth's leaders gathered for one last meeting. Representatives from every nation sat around a table that had once been used for peace negotiations. Now they planned for the greatest war in human history. The Varathari fleet will arrive in 18 hours, Admiral Kim reported. Intelligence suggests at least 50 ships, including several of their massive crystal dreadnoughts. President Martinez of the American Federation spoke first. Admiral, what are our chances of survival? Admiral Kim was quiet for a moment. Honestly, very low. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting an enemy with thousands of years of military experience. Then why fight at all? Asked Prime Minister Singh of the Indian Republic. If we're going to lose anyway, why not try to negotiate? Ambassador Choi Min-ae answered that question. Because they've already told us their terms. Slavery or death. There is no negotiation with beings who see us as animals to be controlled or exterminated. Chancellor Hoffman of the European Union leaned forward. What do our people think? Have we told them the truth about our chances? The first shots of the war came not from the massive fleets facing each other near Earth, but from a small human patrol ship at the edge of the solar system. Captain Song Hai-jin had positioned the converted freighter Defiance at Pluto's orbit, far from the main battle that everyone expected near Earth. Captain, reported her sensor operator Lieutenant Park Jun-ho, Vrathari scout ships are approaching. 3 vessels, crystal formation, standard patrol configuration. Song studied the tactical display. The alien ships were beautiful in their own way, like flying cathedrals made of purple crystal. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never faced real opposition. They're scanning us, Park reported. Standard identification request. Wait, they're powering weapons. Song smiled coldly. The Vrathari expected humans to surrender when faced with superior firepower. They were about to learn their first lesson about humanity. All stop, she ordered. Let them think we're paralyzed with fear. The lead Vrathari ship moved closer, its weapons glowing with energy. A transmission came through in the mechanical voice humans had learned to hate. Primitive vessel, you are in violation of hegemony space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Song activated her own transmitter. This is Captain Song Hai-jin of the Earth Defense Force. You want our surrender? Come and take it. The Vrathari ship fired immediately, sending a beam of purple energy toward the Defiance. But Song had expected this. At the last second, she triggered the ship's hidden modifications. The Defiance split apart like a flower opening. What the aliens had thought was one ship was actually 12 smaller craft held together by magnetic clamps. The energy beam passed harmlessly through empty space while the human craft scattered in all directions. Now! Song shouted into her communications array. Each of the 12 craft fired simultaneously. Not energy weapons like the aliens used, but old-fashioned missiles with nuclear warheads. The Vrathari ships designed to handle energy weapons had no defense against simple kinetic impacts. The first alien ship disappeared in a ball of nuclear fire. The second took 3 missile hits and broke apart, its crystal structure shattering like glass. The third ship tried to retreat but ran straight into a minefield that Song had deployed hours earlier. In less than 60 seconds, 3 Vrathari ships were destroyed without causing any human casualties. But more importantly, every alien ship in the system had witnessed the impossible. Primitives defeating advanced technology through tactics that made no sense. War Commander Drath watched the destruction of his scout patrol from his command ship. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Surprise. How did they do that? Demanded his tactical officer. Our sensors showed only one ship. Replay the engagement, Drath ordered. They watched in slow motion as the human ship came apart, revealing multiple hidden vessels. The tactic was crude, dangerous, and completely unexpected. No civilized species would risk their crews in such unstable configurations. War Commander, his communications officer, reported, "All fleet commanders are requesting new tactical guidelines. This human behavior does not match any known military doctrine." Drath stared at the tactical display showing the wreckage of his scout ships. "Signal the fleet. These primitives are more dangerous than anticipated. All ships are to approach human vessels with maximum caution." But the damage was already done. News of the engagement spread through the Vrathari fleet like a virus. For 10,000 years, they had fought enemies who followed predictable patterns. Humans apparently had no patterns at all. Near Earth, the main human fleet waited in formation around their homeworld. Admiral Kim Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the flagship Seoul, watching as the massive Vrathari fleet approached. 57 alien ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. "Admiral," reported Captain Lee Taemin from his ship Indomitable, "enemy fleet is entering engagement range. They're maintaining formation, following standard hegemony battle protocols." "Excellent," Admiral Kim replied. "That means they're still thinking like civilized beings. Signal all ships. Execute Operation Desperate Hour." What happened next would have been impossible for any other species to attempt. The entire human fleet suddenly broke formation and charged directly at the Vrathari line. No coordination, no strategy, just a mad rush toward the enemy as if panic had overcome military discipline. War Commander Drath watched in disbelief. "Are they insane? They're charging our main battle line with converted cargo ships." "War Commander," his tactical officer said uncertainly, "this could be a trap." "What kind of trap involves suicide?" Drath demanded. "Open fire. Destroy them all." The Vrathari fleet opened fire with devastating effect. Purple energy beams lanced through space, destroying human ships by the dozens. Within minutes, half the human fleet was gone, their debris spreading across space like a metallic cloud. But the remaining human ships kept coming. Even as their friends died around them, they pressed their attack with a ferocity that shocked the aliens. Some human ships, their hulls cracked and bleeding air, rammed Vrathari vessels rather than retreat. "This is madness," Drath muttered as he watched a damaged human cruiser crash into one of his destroyers, both ships exploding in a ball of fire. What Drath didn't know was that the human fleet's apparent panic was carefully planned. While his attention focused on the dramatic battle, small groups of human ships used the chaos to slip past his defensive line. Lieutenant Commander Bae Jin-ho led one of these stealth groups. His ship, the Shadow, was a converted mining vessel painted black and equipped with experimental stealth technology. While the main battle raged, he guided 12 similar ships toward the Vrathari command vessel. "Sir," whispered his pilot, "we're within the enemy fleet formation. Their sensors are focused on the main battle." Bae studied the massive Vrathari command ship through his periscope. It was the size of a small city, covered in crystal towers and energy conduits. But Bae had studied the alien technology carefully. He knew where to strike. "All ships," he transmitted on a tight beam, "target the main communication array. We have one chance to blind their fleet." The stealth ships attacked as one, launching missiles loaded with a special payload, electromagnetic pulse weapons designed by Earth's best scientists. The missiles struck the Vrathari command ship's communication towers, just as the alien commanders were trying to coordinate their response to the human attack. Every alien ship in the fleet suddenly went dark. Their communication networks crashed, their targeting systems failed, and their coordination dissolved into chaos. For crucial minutes, the mighty Vrathari fleet was reduced to individual ships acting without orders. Sergeant Han Soo-bin chose that moment to launch the most audacious attack in human military history. While alien crews struggled to restore their communications, her team of 50 Special Forces soldiers used small, fast ships to board the Vrathari vessels. "Remember," she transmitted to her boarding parties, They don't expect hand-to-hand combat. Their ships aren't designed for internal fighting. Use that advantage. The first boarding party hit a Vrathari destroyer. Subin led her team through the alien ship's crystal corridors, fighting creatures that had never faced humans in close combat. The aliens were stronger and faster, but they were also confused by human tactics. When a Vrathari warrior tried to use its energy weapon in the ship's narrow corridors, Subin's team threw grenades that filled the area with metal fragments. When the aliens tried to coordinate their defense, human hackers activated computer viruses that shut down their internal communication systems. "Sergeant," reported Corporal Cho Minwoo over the radio, "we've reached the ship's power core. Beginning placement of charges." "Confirmed," Subin replied as she fought her way toward the bridge. "All teams, you have 5 minutes before detonation." What followed was 5 minutes of the most intense fighting in human history. In the narrow corridors of alien ships, humans fought creatures from another world using weapons, tactics, and determination that no civilized species would consider using. Subin's team reached the bridge of their target just as the Vrathari crew restored partial communications. The alien captain, a massive creature with 4 arms and glowing red eyes, stared at her in complete shock. "Impossible," it said in accented English. "Primitives do not board warships." "We do," Subin replied, raising her weapon. "Surrender your ship." The alien captain tried to reach for a weapon, but Subin was faster. Her shot disabled the creature without killing it. Around the bridge, her team quickly subdued the remaining crew. "Bridge secured," she reported, downloading navigation data and ship schematics. As Subin's team completed their mission, similar scenes played out across 3 other Vrathari ships. Human boarding parties fought with a combination of high-tech, weapons, and primitive tactics that left alien crews completely unprepared. When the charges detonated, 4 Vrathari ships died from within. But more importantly, the humans had captured crucial intelligence about alien technology and fleet movements. War Commander Drath finally restored communication with his fleet, just in time to watch 4 of his ships explode simultaneously. "Report," he demanded. War Commander, his tactical officer replied with barely controlled panic. "The humans they've boarded our ships. They're fighting." 3 months after the first battle, engineer Kang Min-soo stood in a laboratory that would have been impossible to imagine before the war began. Around him, human and captured alien technology had been combined in ways that violated every principle of safe engineering. But safety was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. "Dr. Park," he called excitedly, "you need to see this." Dr. Park So-young hurried over to his workstation, where a holographic display showed the schematic of a new type of human warship. It looked like nothing that had ever existed, part human engineering, part alien crystal technology, and part pure desperate innovation. "We've successfully integrated their power systems with our weapons," Kang explained. "The result is a ship that can move faster than anything in their fleet and hit harder than their dreadnoughts." Dr. Park studied the design carefully. "What about the crew? These acceleration forces would kill any human." "That's where it gets interesting," Kang said with a grin. "We've developed a new type of acceleration couch using their gravity manipulation technology. Our test pilots can now handle G-forces that would turn aliens into paste." The prototype ship, named Vengeance, was being built in Earth's largest orbital shipyard. Captain Song Hye-jin had volunteered to test the vessel, despite warnings from medical experts that the experimental technology might be lethal to its crew. "Captain," reported Chief Engineer Lee Won-shik as they toured the ship's interior, "the main reactor is a hybrid of human nuclear technology and Vrathari crystal matrices. Theoretically, it should provide 10 times the power of our previous ships." "Theoretically?" Song asked. "Well," Lee admitted, "there's a small chance it might explode and take out everything within 1,000 kilometers. Song looked around the ship's bridge with its mixture of human controls and alien crystal interfaces. "And if it doesn't explode, then we'll have the fastest, most powerful warship in known space." Song nodded. "I'll take those odds." While engineers worked on new ships, military strategists planned new ways to use them. Admiral Kim Do-hyun stood in the war room beneath Seoul, studying intelligence reports that painted a grim picture of what humanity faced. The hegemony is assembling the largest fleet in their history, reported Lieutenant Commander Bei Jin-ho. Over 300 ships, including 7 of their massive crystal citadels. Expected time of arrival? Admiral Kim asked. 6 weeks, sir. They're taking their time gathering forces from across the galaxy. Captain Lee Taeman, recently promoted after his heroic actions in the first battle, stepped forward. Admiral, our spy networks report something interesting. Other species in the galaxy are watching this war very closely. Explain, Admiral Kim ordered. Sir, it seems humanity isn't the first species to face a hegemony ultimatum, but we are the first to fight back. Some of their subject races are starting to ask questions about why they accepted slavery so easily. Admiral Kim allowed himself a small smile. So our resistance is inspiring others? It appears so, sir. The hegemony is having to deploy forces to suppress uprisings on worlds they thought were pacified. This was exactly the kind of information Admiral Kim had hoped for. Humanity couldn't defeat the hegemony alone, but they might not have to. In another part of the complex, Ambassador Choi Min-ae worked on humanity's most ambitious project yet, diplomatic warfare. Using captured alien communication technology, her team had made contact with resistance movements across the galaxy. Ambassador, reported Dr. Yoon Hai-jin, we've established communication with the Kithara resistance in the Andromeda sector. They're requesting technical assistance for an uprising against their hegemony overseers. Choi looked at the star map showing confirmed resistance movements. Red dots marked over 30 systems where subject races were beginning to rebel against hegemony rule. What kind of assistance are they requesting? She asked. Weapons technology, tactical advice, and most importantly, proof that the hegemony can be defeated. Give them everything they need, Choi decided. If we're going to die fighting, we might as well take the entire hegemony system down with us. But humanity's most important work was happening in secret laboratories where Dr. Park So-young led projects that would have horrified pre-war humanity. The moral compromises required for survival had changed everyone. Doctor, reported Dr. Cho Sang-wook, the neural virus is ready for deployment. We've produced enough to affect approximately 50,000 Vrathari crew members. Dr. Park looked at the containers of what appeared to be harmless gas. In reality, each container held a weapon that could shut down the neural implants that all hegemony species relied on for advanced thinking. Effectiveness? She asked. Within 6 hours of exposure, affected individuals will lose all higher brain functions. They'll be unable to operate their ships or weapons. It was a terrible weapon, one that reduced sentient beings to the level of animals. But the hegemony planned to exterminate humanity entirely. Dr. Park had long since stopped feeling guilty about fighting monsters with monstrous weapons. Begin production, she ordered. We'll need enough for their entire fleet. As humanity prepared for the coming battle, they received unexpected intelligence from an unlikely source. Captain Yoon Jae-wook, still technically a prisoner but now being held on a different Vrathari ship, had been secretly gathering information about hegemony fleet movements. Using a modified communication device hidden in his artificial tooth, Yoon transmitted crucial intelligence back to Earth. The hegemony fleet was larger than expected, but it was also more divided than anyone had realized. Earth Command, Yoon transmitted during a brief window when his guards were distracted. The hegemony species don't trust each other completely. The Vrathari command the fleet, but the other races have their own agendas. There are rivalries that could be exploited. Admiral Kim received Yoon's transmission with great interest. So the enemy alliance isn't as solid as they want us to believe? Apparently not, sir, Lieutenant Commander Bei replied. Captain Yoon reports that several species joined the hegemony only because they feared destruction. If we can prove the hegemony can be defeated, they might switch sides, Admiral Kim finished, or at least stop fighting for their oppressors. The breakthrough came when engineer Kang Min-soo successfully tested humanity's most audacious technological achievement, a hybrid ship that combined the best of human and alien engineering. The Vengeance completed its test flight with performance that exceeded all expectations. "Admiral," Captain Song Hee-jin reported from the ship's bridge. "We just traveled from Earth to Mars in 12 minutes. That's 4 times faster than the fastest Vrathari ship." "Weapons performance?" Admiral Kim asked. "Our main gun can penetrate the shields of their heaviest dreadnought. And, sir, we've solved the communication jamming problem. This ship can coordinate an entire fleet even under heavy electromagnetic interference." Admiral Kim felt hope for the first time since the war began. "How quickly can we build more?" "We have enough captured alien technology for 12 ships," Song replied. "But sir," "That's all. If we lose these ships, we can't replace them. Then we won't lose them," Admiral Kim decided. "How long until the enemy fleet arrives?" 2 weeks, sir." "Then we have 2 weeks to change the course of this war." What followed were the most intense 2 weeks in human history. Every shipyard, every factory, every laboratory worked around the clock to prepare for the battle that would determine humanity's survival. Sergeant Han Subin trained a new generation of boarding specialists using captured alien weapons and tactics. Her students learned to fight in zero gravity, to hack alien computers, and to use the enemy's own technology against them. "Remember," she told her trainees, "they still think we're primitives. They expect us to fight with simple weapons and basic tactics. When you board their ships, show them what humans have learned about war." Private Jang Ki-tai, now a veteran despite his young age, raised his hand. "Sergeant, what if they adapt to our tactics?" Subin smiled grimly. "Then we adapt faster. That's what humans do better than anyone else in the galaxy." As the enemy fleet approached Earth's solar system, humanity prepared for the largest battle in their history. The new hybrid ships took their positions alongside the surviving vessels from the first engagement. On Earth, 7 billion people waited to learn whether their species would survive. War Commander Drath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crystal Throne, watching the tactical display that showed his approaching fleet. 300 ships, the largest armada the hegemony had assembled in 1,000 years. Surely even these insane humans would surrender when faced with such overwhelming force. "War Commander," his intelligence officer reported, "long-range sensors detect human ships in defensive positions around their homeworld, approximately 60 vessels." Drath studied the numbers. The humans had fewer ships than before, probably because they couldn't replace their losses quickly enough. "This battle would be over quickly." "Composition of their fleet?" he asked. "Mixed design, sir. Some appear to be their standard converted civilian vessels, but we're detecting several ships of unknown configuration." "Unknown how?" "Sir, they appear to be using some form of hybrid technology. Our sensors are having difficulty getting clear readings." For a moment, Drath felt the same unease that had troubled him since first encountering humanity. These primitives kept doing. The ancient world of Eternus had not seen visitors in over 3,000 years. Hidden in a nebula at the galaxy's edge, it was the secret homeworld of the ethereal collective, the beings who had ruled the hegemony since its founding 10 millennia. Because now, for the first time in centuries, the ethereals emerged from their meditation chambers to face a crisis that threatened everything they had built. The great crystal spires of their capital city hummed with urgent energy as the galaxy's oldest rulers gathered in emergency council. High ethereal Zenth, ancient beyond measure, studied the reports of humanity's impossible victories with something approaching disbelief. In 10,000 years of galactic rule, no primitive species had ever defeated a hegemony fleet. Most had surrendered before the first shot was fired. "These humans," Zenth said, his voice echoing through the minds of the assembled council. "They fight as if they do not understand that resistance is futile." "Perhaps," suggested Ethereal Vorth, "they truly do not understand. Their species may lack the psychological development to recognize superior authority." Or, offered Ethereal Kess, "they understand perfectly and simply refuse to accept it." The council fell silent at this possibility. In their long rule of the galaxy, the Ethereals had encountered species that fought briefly before accepting hegemony dominance. But they had never faced a species that seemed incapable of surrender. "Show me their communications," Zenth commanded. The council chamber filled with holographic recordings of human broadcasts from the recent battle. They watched Captain Song Hee-jin's ship dance between hegemony dreadnoughts, destroying vessels 10 times its size through tactics that made no logical sense. They observed human boarding parties fighting with a ferocity that terrified alien crews who had thought themselves the galaxy's apex predators. But most disturbing were the speeches from human leaders. Ambassador Choi Min-ae's words to the galaxy resonated through the chamber. "We do not fight because we believe we can win easily. We fight because some things are worth dying for." "Madness," whispered Ethereal Vorth. "They speak of principles as if they matter more than survival." High Ethereal Zenth had ruled for 8,000 years. He had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, the birth and death of stars, the evolution of species from primitives to spacefaring peoples. But he had never encountered anything like humanity. "Summon War Commander Drath," he ordered. "We must understand these creatures before we decide how to deal with them." War Commander Drath stood before the Ethereal Council with his career in ruins. Half his fleet was destroyed. A quarter had defected to join human-led resistance movements, and his reputation as the hegemony's greatest military leader was shattered. "Explain," High Ethereal Zenth commanded, his mental voice cutting through Drath's mind like a blade. "High One," Drath began, struggling to find words for what he had witnessed. "The humans do not fight like any species we have encountered. They use tactics that should be impossible. They accept casualties that should break their morale. They adapt to our responses faster than our strategists can plan countermoves." "You are describing superior military capability," Ethereal Kess observed. "Yet their technology was primitive when first encountered." "They learn, High One. They take our technology and improve it. They study our tactics and develop counters. In 3 months, they went from helpless primitives to a force that defeated our greatest fleet." "And their psychology?" Zenth asked. Drath was quiet for a long moment. "High One, I do not think they can be made to surrender. Something in their nature rejects the concept of acceptable defeat." The Ethereal Council pondered this information. For 10,000 years, their rule had been based on a simple principle. Overwhelming force applied correctly would make any species accept hegemony authority. But humans seemed immune to this logic. "What do you recommend?" Zenth asked. "Complete sterilization," Drath replied without hesitation. "Every human world, every ship, every trace of their civilization must be destroyed. If we do not eliminate them entirely, they will continue to inspire resistance throughout our empire." Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was grappling with the consequences of their victory. In the months following the Great Battle, resistance movements had sprouted across the galaxy like wildfire. Dozens of species that had accepted hegemony rule for centuries were suddenly questioning why they had surrendered their freedom. Dr. Park So-young stood in her laboratory, but instead of weapons, she was now working on something entirely different. Communication technology that would allow the growing resistance to coordinate across vast distances. "Dr. Park," Engineer Kang Min-soo called from his workstation, "we've successfully established contact with resistance movements in 47 systems. They're all requesting the same thing." "Let me guess," she said. "They want to know how to fight back." "More than that. They want to know how to think like humans." This request had become common throughout the galaxy. Species that had evolved to accept hierarchy were struggling to understand how humans could reject authority so completely. Earth had become an accidental school for rebellion. Captain Song Hye-jin, now promoted to admiral after her heroic actions, worked with alien resistance leaders to develop new tactics. The conference room of the Vengeance had become a meeting place for beings from dozens of different worlds. "The key," she explained to a gathering of liberation movement leaders, "is not to fight the way they expect you to fight. When they expect logic, use chaos. When they expect surrender, attack. When they expect fear, show determination." Commander Thex of the Cathera Liberation Fleet, whose defection had helped turn the tide of the battle, raised one of his 4 arms. "Admiral Song, our species was bred for obedience. How do we overcome thousands of years of evolutionary programming?" Song considered the question carefully. "Start with small acts of defiance. Question orders that don't make sense. Protect others when authority figures threaten them. Remember that freedom isn't something you're given, it's something you take. But the most important conversations were happening in the highest levels of human government. Ambassador Choi Min-ai met with world leaders to discuss humanity's next steps. "We're winning," President Martinez of the American Federation said, studying reports from across the galaxy. "The hegemony is losing control of their empire." "We're winning this phase," Ambassador Choi corrected, "but they still have resources we can't match. If they decide to commit everything to destroying us, then we make sure that's not a decision they can make," interrupted Admiral Kim Do-hyun, joining the meeting via hologram from his flagship. "We've learned something important about the hegemony. Their power is based on fear and the assumption that resistance is futile. But we've proven resistance works." Chancellor Hoffman of the European Union leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "We take the fight to them. Instead of waiting for them to attack us, we attack the foundations of their power." The plan that emerged from these meetings was audacious beyond belief. Humanity would launch simultaneous strikes against hegemony authority across the galaxy, coordinating with resistance movements to create widespread rebellion that would make it impossible for the ethereals to focus their remaining forces on Earth. Captain Lee Taemin received his orders with a mixture of excitement and terror. He would lead a fleet of 20 human ships to the hegemony capital world of Centralis, where the administrative center of galactic government had stood for 10,000 years. "Sir?" his tactical officer asked during the mission briefing. "What's our objective? We can't possibly conquer the capital with 20 ships." Lee smiled grimly. "We're not there to conquer anything. We're there to deliver a message." As human fleets prepared for their most daring missions yet, the Ethereal Council reached a fateful decision. High Ethereal Zenth stood before the galaxies, ancient rulers, and spoke words that would change everything. "The human contamination has spread beyond control," he declared. "Conventional military action is insufficient. We must use the final protocol." The final protocol was the hegemony's ultimate weapon, kept secret for 10,000 years. It was a device that could destroy entire star systems by destabilizing their suns. It had never been used because the ethereals had never faced a threat that required such extreme measures. But humanity and their growing alliance of rebels represented something unprecedented, a challenge to the very concept of hegemony rule. If humans succeeded in their rebellion, the entire galactic order would collapse. "Are we certain this is necessary?" asked Ethereal Vorth. "The destruction of entire star systems. Would you prefer the destruction of our civilization?" Zenth replied. "The humans have shown that their rebellion is infectious. If we do not stop them completely, every species in the galaxy will eventually follow their example." The vote was close, but the decision was made. The final protocol would be activated. Earth's sun would be destabilized, destroying not just humanity but every world in their solar system. The message would be clear. This is what happens to species that refuse to submit. But the ethereals had made a crucial mistake. They assumed that humans would react to the threat of total extinction the same way other species had, with despair and surrender. Admiral Kim Do-hyun received the intelligence about the final protocol from human spies within the Resum